Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. Last time we left off with a modern army rises in China. We're now on to a king decides to retire. April 12th, 1944. Victor Emmanuel quits, but does not abdicate. The King of Italy, since 1900, announced on April 12th his final and irrevocable decision to withdraw from the Italian throne on the day that the Allies entered Rome, and to appoint his son, Crown Prince Umberto, Prince of Piedmont, as Lieutenant General of the realms. Technically, Victor Emmanuel remained king even after the liberation of Rome, but lived as a plain citizen and exercised no power. The powers were assumed by Umberto, shown above. There's Umberto. And yeah, obviously, King of Italy, big deal. He's been king for as long as Italy's been a country, I believe. Which is crazy because, Italy's really not that old still. In World War I, it was the new player on the field. But that's once again, that's another thing. He was the king in World War I even. So this guy's been king for quite a while, and it's really interesting, honestly, to see that he gave up these powers. You don't get many kings that do that. Japanese retreat in New Britain. April 14th, 1944. The enemy pushed back. Although making a headway in Burma, the Japanese seem to have lost some of their do-or-die spirit on the Pacific front. They made a voluntary withdrawal of considerable extent on New Britain, abandoning their base in Gasmata and Cape Hoskins, leaving 4/5 of the island to the Allies and retired to the vicinity of Rabaul. This move brought particular cheer on the island to the Allies, to Australia. Whoops, my bad. For New Britain was the principal offensive base for the whole area in the days when Japan was advancing and was a real threat to the British Commonwealth. Now, Rabaul had dropped to a status little better than that of Bataan. In this picture, a 5,800-ton Japanese freighter, 380 feet long, lies on the bottom of the Vanuatu, south of Rabaul. Enemy supplies piled on the beach include food and ammunition. The evenly spaced trees of this coconut plantation form an interesting background for this impromptu supply dump. One of several used by the enemy since Simpson Harbor at Rabaul was made untenable by constant bombing by Allied land and sea planes. With their hold on New Britain slipping, the Japanese were gradually losing control of the Bismarck archipelago, which they had gained rapidly and at little cost during the early stages of the war. Loss of this chain of islands would inevitably mean the end of the Japanese hope in the far South Pacific. Hopes that had seemed so bright in 1942 when the United States was fighting with a skeleton navy and no air force. Yeah, so we can see evenly spaced out trees, which looks fake, really, because how spaced out they are. But you can see the liner crash on the beach there, the impromptu supply dump. But the Japanese had so many ambitions, but they could never hold them. They didn't have the people, the resources, any of it. Now, they did have the will to fight, but the will to fight can only get you so far sometimes. Air power meets sea power in the South Pacific. April 14th, 1944. Bad news for the Japanese. This photograph, snapped at the moment of what appears to be a meeting of sea and air power, was made during a momentous D-Day in the South Pacific Theater of Operations. The ships in the air are B-25 bombers en route to blast Japanese aerodomes at Rabaul. The ships on the sea are an American invasion convoy speeding toward the Green Islands. Now you can see all of those airplanes, the air power down there. And yeah, so they're going to have a mass force on this to try to take it quick and fast, kick the Japanese off, or at least get a strong foothold so that you can then have a longer protracted battle, which the Americans know they will always win. Or at least they think they will, you know. And they will be proven kind of right on that. Reinforcements for Anzo, April 1944. On their way to a beachhead. Veteran troops of the United States Army who took part in the invasion of North Africa are shown aboard on LCI, Landing Craft Infantry, on their way to an LST, Landing Craft Tanks, for the journey to the Allied beachhead of Anzio, just below Rome. Yeah, so they're going to throw more troops into Anzio, make a stronger offensive force there, and hope that they can then take Rome like they would like, which is still going to be a little bit, though. Off to the invasion of Hollandia, April 22nd, 1944, making a further stride against Japan. Climaxing 3 weeks of aerial bombardment, during which 1,500 tons of bombs were dropped, thousands of American troops land in the Netherlands, New Guinea, in 3 sectors on April 22nd, 1944. Thus, cutting off an estimated 60,000 Japanese soldiers defending the Pacific Islands. This official U.S. Navy photograph depicts troops clambering up the side of a destroyer transport, a World War I destroyer converted into a fast troop ship, for the trip to Hollandia. There, our invading forces found little Japanese opposition and moved quickly inland to seize airfields. Yeah, gonna try to take as much land back, and they're gonna take it rapidly here for a little bit, and then there will be a little bit more protracted fighting a little bit later on. But for now, we're getting quick, decisive victories in the Pacific. The seizure of Hollandia, April 22nd, 1944. Men and equipment come ashore. And the picture at top, heavily loaded LSTs, landing ship tanks, hug the beach of Tanamera Bay as part of a massive operation which swept to the immediate success against minor opposition, seizing 3 airfields and quelling all resistance within 5 days. In the picture below, a truck convoy just off the LSTs line up along the beachhead. Okay, you can see here, trucks lining up. Here's the beachhead right here. They're lining up, get supplies, move further in, try to help supply these troops. The logistical power of this war is just unprecedented. And it was only seen, really, since the last World War, but in this war, it is even more so because there's a lot less sitting on trenches. And there's a lot more movement in this war. There was movement in the last war, quite a bit in some areas, but this war has a lot more of that and a lot more resource requirement for fuel for planes, fuel for tanks, fuel for trucks, any of that, infantry, supplies, things like that. So the logistical power of this war is just crazy. MacArthur lands at Hollandia, April 28th, 1944. The general goes ashore. General MacArthur and his staff were in at the Hollandia landings. Here, they are seen coming ashore in a landing craft on the beach at Iatape, New Guinea. The presence of the high-ranking officers at these Pacific landings did a lot, to bolster the morale of the men. MacArthur was noted for his habit of appearing on the actual combat field at an early hour, soon after the beachheads had been established, to supervise operations. Yeah, so MacArthur, very influential and important general. As we know, he'll be very important in the Pacific. There's a famous picture of him later on after the surrender of Japan with the emperor that gets put in Japanese papers to show that he's just a guy and he's shorter than MacArthur. And then later in MacArthur's career, I'm sure many people know this, but later in his career, he is in the Korean War, and he tells the president, he says, hey, just nuke northern, like the border between Korea and China, because obviously China was helping North Korea, and that was part of that conflict, why it was so back and forth for a while. And the U.S. government tells him, no, we can't do that, and basically he gets more or less kicked out. Not quite, but he gets all he no longer has the favor as he once did, per se, because of that, which interesting. I am kind of surprised he never tried to become president. I think he had the influence. He probably could have. But with that, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a comment. Tell me what I could improve on. I always appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Thank you.